most young Icelanders, as myself, grew up watching a lot of American children's programming, Disney cartoons and etc. We of course watched these with Icelandic dubbing, and often the characters were given Icelandic names, or their names were Icelandicized, just to make the names more understandable for Icelandic children, and also just to have the dialogue smoother, I suppose. Like, it'd be weird if you had something completely dubbed into English, dubbed into Icelandic, sorry, and then all the English words would pop out like a sour thumb. So it makes sense that they would Icelandicize or even translate the names. And in this video I just want to go over some of the interesting name choices for a lot of these fictional characters that I grew up with. First, let's start out with something nerdy for all of my Star Wars fan homies out there. So I read the official novelization of the first Star Wars film when I was a teenager. So in case you didn't know, I believe that before the Star Wars film was premiered, George Lucas had actually novelized the script of the movie, and the novel turned out quite popular even before the movie came out, and this helped him get a higher budget for making the Star Wars film, which was very good, obviously, for the film. And the translated version into Icelandic came out in Iceland just around the time when the movie was premiered here, which was, I believe, in the winter of 1978, and that is the version that I read. And actually a lot of the names from the original novel still hold up today, or are still commonly used. Well, maybe not with my generation, but people of an older generation that watched Star Wars, when the original movies when they were young. I, of course, grew up watching the prequels before I saw the originals, so anyway. So, Star Wars was referred to as Stjörnustríð, which is a direct translation, and the Skywalker family name was translated into Geimgengill, or Space Walker, and Luke was given the name Logi, which is a common Icelandic name, kind of like Bob or Joe or something, and I think Leia was simply referred to as Leia. And I can't remember about Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think, like, early in the film he is referred to as Ben Kenobi, and I think they just used the name Ben throughout the story, if I remember correctly. I don't have a copy of the original translation. Emperor Palpatine, yeah, that's why they had to translate it. He is once referred to as Pálmi, also a rather common Icelandic name. For example, I had a teacher once, a Danish teacher named Pálmi, and yeah, by the way he taught us, yeah, it's a very fitting name for a dictator, now that I think about it. But in most of the story he's simply referred to as Keisarin, the emperor. And Darth Vader, of course, was referred to as Svarthöfði, which means black head. But the word Svarthöfði also appears in Iceland sometimes as a place name. Like, I think there's a street named Svarthöfði close to where I work, for example. A lot of streets there ending with the name Höfði, and I believe one of them is Svarthöfði. Han Solo was named Hans Ole. Yeah, that doesn't bear any translation. It's just the word Hans and Ole, and both names that you can actually name your children in Iceland. And oh yeah, and the planet Tatooine, this is the most interesting, was referred to as Urður. Urður has something to do with, like, rocks and dunes and deserty, sandy area. So, for example, we often refer to, like, a very rocky, vegetationless area in Iceland as simply a urð. Chicken Run was a film that I absolutely loved as a child. Me and my mother would watch it together like dozens of times. I believe it was only referred to as Chicken Run in Icelandic. I can't remember it ever having an Icelandic title like Kjúklingaflóttin or some stuff like that. I don't remember the character's name that well. I remember that Rocky, he is called Rocky in the English version, I am assuming. He was referred to as simply Rocky. Yeah, the Icelandic word for rock, as in rock and roll, is rock. So makes sense there. The main character, I don't know what she was called in the English version. She was referred to as Gia, and that giant hen that laid the most eggs, I think her name was Akka, and the farmers were referred to as Herra and Fru, like it was either Skadi or Skari, I can't remember. I think like Skari would be like Scar from Lion King. He was simply called Skari. So yeah, in the Lion King, or Konungur Ljónanna as we refer to it as, then the names were all just Icelandicized. Simbi became Simba, etc. Oh yeah, and then there is Shrek. Now, when I watched it in the cinema, I gotta say, when I watched Shrek for the first time in the cinema as a child, I didn't think it was that great. I was pretty underwhelmed by it, but like later on it has really grown on me. I think since I saw it in the cinema, I've never seen the movie all the way through ever again, but I have seen, like, you know, when I was visiting friends or whatever, or we were watching it at school, so I've seen a lot of scenes from it again, and now, like, I now have very good memories of the film. When I first saw it, I thought it was just kind of meh. But yeah, I don't remember what the characters were called there, neither in English nor Icelandic, but bear with me, my dear, kæru Íslendingavinir, segi mér, það bara ég? Eða var það þannig að þegar trailerinn fyrst kom út, þá hét karakterinn Skrekkur? En svo þegar myndin kom út, þá allt í einu hét hann Shrek aftur. So yeah, I think that was kind of weird, because I very vividly remember, because I had a video cassette where there was a that included a trailer for Shrek, and I very strongly remember, you know, the scene when they're on the bridge, and you know, like that monkey looks down, and he's like, Skrekkur, ég lít niður. However, when I then saw it in the cinema, it had turned into Shrek, ég lít niður. Yeah, I really gotta watch Shrek again, man. Nei, dauðu gæluna bursta borðinu. En hvar eigum að sitja hana? Rúmið upptekið. Now let's get into the really fun stuff. DuckTales. Or as we like to call it, sögur úr Andabæ. By the way, is the town called that in the English version? Ducktown? Anyway, the rich uncle, his name is Scrooge McDuck, isn't it? I think that's the name. Anyway, he is referred to as Joachim Aðalönd. Joachim is, yeah, the Icelandization of the name Joachim. Yeah, so it's a legit Icelandic name. Aðalönd means like chief duck, or Hauptente, it would be in German. Main duck, chief duck, something like that. Of course, Donald Duck is known in Iceland as Andrés Önd. You know, that makes a lot of sense, because, you know, Donald Duck, DD, versus Andrés Önd, you know, Donald Önd wouldn't sound that well, but, you know, a word that begins with A in front of a word that begins with Ö makes a lot of sense. Andrés is also just a common Icelandic name. It's the Icelandic version of Andrew. And of course, Donald's girlfriend is referred to as Andrésína Önd. Andrésína is just a made-up femaleization of Andrés. Why the two have the same last name, I'm not sure. Maybe there's some incest going on there. Yucky. Of course, the three boys, they are named Ripra or Rup. Totally made up names that mean nothing. They just picked something that sounded similar to made up something that sounds similar to one another. What are they called in English again? Huey, Dewey, and Louie? Huey, Dowie, and Louie? Something like that. Then the grandma duck, also don't know her name in English, but she is just called Amma Önd or grandma duck. Although sometimes it is revealed that her real name is Hortensina Önd. I think Hortensina is a real name. Hold on, I need to Google that. Okay, apparently Hortensina is a plant. Who would have known? And then of course there are the Beetle Boys, which we refer to as Bjarnabóvarnir, the bear thieves. Yeah, because they're bears, I suppose. This is my very favorite. I don't know what his name is in English, but he's like another rival billionaire to Scrooge McDuck. And in Icelandic he is, another Scotsman, another Scots duck, if you will. He is referred to as Gull Ívar Grjótarði. That is a badass name. That pretty much means Gold Ivor or Gold Ivan badass. Like, Grjótarði, is, when you are tough as nails, you are grjótharður. Let's say you are driving, you turn over your car several times and you crawl out of the wreck without a scratch on, and you walk slowly away from the wreck and light a cigarette as the car blows up behind you, then people would say, damn, þessi gaur er sko grjótharður. So yeah, Scrooge McDuck's main rival is literally called Mr. Badass in the Icelandic translation. That is pretty badass. Okay, then there's his other rival that's called in Icelandic Jói Rockafellir. I don't know what he's called in English, but I'm assuming his name is derived from John Rockefeller. I haven't looked it up, but it's gonna pop up on the screen right here, and so yeah. And the scientist, his name is Georg Gearløse, so George Shiftless, like a shift in a car, he has no shifts. And the witch is called Hexiadetrix. That sounds like she would also be called in another language, so I'm guessing they just Icelandicized that. Mickey Mouse, of course, is named Mickey Mouse, pretty basic. Mickey is not a real Icelandic name, but it's like if you're named Michael in Icelandic or Mikael, you would probably get the nickname Mickey. Mickey Mouse's girlfriend, which I don't know what her name is in English, but we refer to as Mina Moose, or although her actual name is Minerva Moose or Minvera Moose. I don't know if I spelled that correctly, but usually she's just referred to as Mina. By the way, why these two also have the same last name I find a little bit curious. Maybe Moose or Mouse is just such a common last name in this fictional universe. Maybe it's like being called Smith, it's pretty feasible that two persons of the opposite sex named Smith would fall in love and they wouldn't have to change their name because they're already named Smith. That's probably happened. Naturally, while on the topic of DuckTales, we need to address the title song, one of the greatest cartoon opening songs in all of history. And of course, the Icelandic version is the absolute best version, by far. Í landinu loftin blá líka sænum, hættur og háski, hlátur og gáski, endur í andabænum búa djarfar endur. Lastly, I just want to briefly touch upon Recess. Remember Recess? Yeah, stupid fucking show, but for what it's worth, it was entertaining enough. I just remember it very vividly, when I watched it for the first time, the pilot episode when it aired on Icelandic television, that, just how Icelandic they made the names, For example, the main character, so I googled it, his name is called Theodore Jasper Detweiler. Anyway, and his name is called, in Icelandic, Teitur Bárðarson. I remember it so vividly in the first episode or something when he does something wrong and I don't know, teacher or whatever, like, yells out his name, Teitur Bárðarson, enn eina ferðina. Oh, and that Snitch kid, his name was Rútur in Icelandic, which isn't a common Icelandic name, but I think it is a legit name, you know, that you could name your child or whatever. And yeah, he was apparently named Randall Weems. Yeah. if I were to read it the way it would sound in Icelandic, it would be Randall Weems. Randall. Okay, these are the only two names that I remember from the show, but I remember that all the other characters had like very Icelandic names. Like I think they were like Anna, Skúli and stuff like that. So anyway, these were just a few interesting little translations or Icelandic versions of foreign names. I hope you like this video. Við bara sjáumst vonandi sem fyrst og munið að fara vel með ykkur, spritta ykkur oft og nota grímur. Við erum öll almannavarnir.